Hello, this is the Reverend Chris Barber, and I'm coming to you pre-recorded from my home as I'm feeling under the weather. And per our pandemic instructions, I am working from home. Nice to check in on this Monday morning in what is going to be a very important week in American history because we have a presidential election taking place tomorrow. And tomorrow we will see Americans who have yet to submit their ballots go into the polls and cast their vote for who they want to be the next American president. And we will hopefully sometime this week have the results of that and know who indeed will be the next president. It's an important process and something that leads me to think a lot about what is the role of government in our lives, the purpose of government in our lives, what's appropriately done with government, what's not, how is it that government of the world can exist, and there also can be what the word talks about as a kind of government of heaven and a government of spirit that should have sway or hold sway in our lives. And so that's what we're talking about this week is the role of government. But I wanted to start out, before we even got to reflecting on the role of natural world government, I wanted to start with a kind of umbrella teaching, an overarching idea that we find in the Word. And today I want to use the Psalms to capture the Psalms to present this in the way that the Psalms have captured this idea. This comes from Psalm 93, and this is about the eternal reign of the Lord. Psalm 93 reads, "The Lord reigns. He is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed. He has girded himself with strength. Surely the world is established so that it cannot be moved. Your throne is established from of old. You are from everlasting. The floods have lifted up, O Lord. The floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up the waves. The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, than the mighty waves of the sea. Your testimonies are very sure. Holiness adorns your house, O Lord, forever. Amen. I love the imagery in this. We start out with this idea of the Lord as a king, as the Lord as a sovereign, one who has a throne and rules over the things of all creation. And it's not just a temporary reign either. We see in verse 2, your throne is established from of old. You are from everlasting. This isn't a temporary leader that we find in the Lord, but an eternal one. This isn't a leader for now, but it's a leader forever. And what do we do with that? How do we make use of that, especially as we are picking our leaders in the natural world, leaders to manage the affairs of the world governance? Um, and what do you do with this difference? And this is something that I think about. The difference between sort of the ruler in heaven, who's there regardless of our say-so, regardless of our opinions, regardless of our vote. We don't get a vote on God. What do we do when we have that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, we have a natural world government where, at least in the United States, the citizens have a say? I think about this in the context of what can I do? What can I do? And that's a big conversation. What can we do when we're talking about natural world governance, especially this American president's election? People are talking about the choice is yours. The time has come for you to stand up and speak your voice, for you to say what it is that you believe and what it is that you want to be. And the way to make that voice heard is through a ballot. And so on the one hand, we're told quite a bit of this. You have the choice. You have the power. If you speak up, then it is your will as America. Your will be done. But on the other hand, we have this image of the Lord who is in charge of all things, who is, as the reading said, it says, your throne is established from of old. Established from of old. You are from everlasting. And so we don't get a vote there. We don't get the chance to say, I want you to be in charge. We don't get a chance to look at God's record and say, well, God, here are the places where you've done well, and here are the places where I think you could have done better. And for that reason, we're going to put somebody else in charge. It just doesn't work. And so that's the other hand. The other hand is this idea that we've got no say whatsoever when it comes to God. And yet we do. Not so much as to whether or not God is in charge of the universe, whether or not God exists. We're not in charge of any of that. But we do have a voice. We do have a voice. And that voice is in whether or not we are going to abide by what that God teaches, abide by what we know God says in his word, which really is his word to us, his telling us what he expects of us, his telling us what he does for us. We might not have a say in whether or not that God is there and ruling, but we certainly have a say of whether or not that God is going to be in charge of our own lives, in charge of our own hearts, whether or not that God is going to hold sway in our lives. That's where we have the choice. In fact, it reminds me of something that we'll talk about later this week, which comes from the book of Joshua, where we're told by Joshua, or the children of Israel are told, and if the children of Israel are told it, we're told it by extension. Choose this day whom you'll serve. Choose this day whom you will serve. And then he gives them a choice between God and something that we'll look at later in the week. And so even in this time of a lot of choice in the natural world when it comes to our leaders, and we also are voting on local leaders as well in some places, and state leaders as well. And so there's a lot of choice in the air right now, but at the same time, there is no choice when it comes to putting God in charge, but there is choice as to whether or not we're going to follow that God. Something that's reassuring and also maybe a little scary in that psalm is this idea that the floods have lifted up, O Lord. The floods have lifted up their voice, lifted up their waves. The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, than the mighty waves of the sea. And so it can seem like whatever we want, God's going to be there. And is there real freedom, true freedom in that? We'll explore that later on this week. But there is. I think there is freedom, even if the Lord is still over it all. And so today, as you are hearing news about what's happening in the pre-election phase of this process that our nation is going through, think also about what is going on in your heart, mind, and life, and how it is that you are making choices about who is in control of your spirit. That's it for now, folks. I hope you have yourselves a great day. I look forward to being back on campus. Take care.